Let's Talk ADHD with Alex High and today, Dr. Alan Graham. Welcome to the show, Dr. Graham. I'm really excited to have you. I heard you speak at my very first ADHD conference and was super impressed. Went out and bought your book, and
Oh,
one of your
cool.
books, I should say.
Well,
And yeah, it's a pleasure to have you.
thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah. So tell me, what's your story with ADHD?
Okay, so it probably goes back way before I even knew that that's what I was doing. So, while I was getting my doctorate, I was also teaching fourth grade.
Hmm.
And, I've always had a propensity for those kids who kind of were either they were kind of spacey or they kind of just acted up a lot. But I just kind of had a thing for them. I just could relate to them. And so I had this one kid who was just a virtual space cadet. And I started making his schedule and putting it on his desk for him and kind of giving him time management skills, things like that. I didn't know why. I just figured that's what he needed. And so as I continued my work, I was working as a clinical psychologist once I got my doctorate. And when I saw patients, I did a lot of hospital work in the 80s. And again, all the patients who were acting out had that kind of sparkle in their eye. They're always mine. One of those kids had come in and said, that must be one of Graham's patients. And so, that's who I worked with. And then in the middle 80s, there was a doctoral level pastoral counselor that joined our practice, our clinical practice, because I wasn't coaching then. Didn't know what coaching was. And he had ADHD. So that was really the first adult that I encountered who had ADHD. And that was before even people were talking about that. And he really was ADHD. So we worked together for a few years and I learned a lot from him and hopefully he learned a lot from me. And then later on, in the later 90s, no, I discovered coaching, but I discovered executive coaching, working in organizations. And so that's kind of cool. So I think I'll do some of that. So I started to do that. And then I said, maybe I should get trained in coaching. What a concept, right? And so I signed up with Mentor Coach and I got my coach training there. And in my first coach training, I met Dr. Bill Benninger, who's a psychologist in Columbus, Ohio, and he liked working with people with ADHD. I liked working with people with ADHD, so we created advisor.com with two D's, get it, advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And we started doing teleconferences for parents who had kids with ADHD. We had people from all over the country, actually some people from Canada, and we ended up being recognized as an innovative program at Chad for 6 years because nobody was doing teleconferences back then. And we kept on doing it. And then I realized, this ADD coaching, this is a good thing. It really seems to work. I talked with Jody Sleeper Triplet, Nancy Rady, and we presented together and it just made some sense to me. And I think ADHD coaching really kind of took off in the late 90s when insurance companies were doing all this managed care things and not letting you see patients for more than 6 times or 7 times. And so I think that because ADHD is a chronic disorder, it's always there. That kind of led the way for ADHD coaching because then an ADHD coach could see people for a longer period of time. And so I started doing that and actually started training ADHD coaches around 2003 or 4 and have been doing it since. And I think people with ADHD are just the coolest people. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I like how you just sort of stumbled into it and didn't really
oh, so
know.
the other part of it, that kid
Yeah.
in the early 2000s, I'm on staff at the local hospital.
Mm-hmm.
they were bringing around this pediatrician guy who was joining the staff, and they introduced me to him, and they told me his name. I said, I recognize that name. Were you in my fourth grade class? I said, you're Mr. Graham. And that's when he told me about the story that I would make all these cards for him and all these plans for him. He said, and I have ADHD. So I mean, that was the coolest thing, because all of a sudden it's like it came together.
Yeah, went full circle there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of one question I have as we kind of move more into the interview portion. What's been your key to success? I know a lot of people with ADHD struggle with this idea of success. What does it mean? How do I get there? And what's your key to success? And then how do you try and make that approachable for people with ADHD?
So I would say the key to success is do it.
Mm.
I think a lot of people with ADHD, they get so anxious about doing it because they're afraid they're going to act impulsively. And so then they ruminate about it. And so to come up with a plan, come up with an intention, and then do it. In coaching, we see people as creative, resourceful, and whole. So I'm working with someone, I'm looking at who they are as a person, and they're what makes them wonderful. And I think that they can learn to bring that to the world and makes the world a better place.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is there anything unusual you do because of ADHD, whether that's in your practice or just on the street?
On the street. So I don't have ADHD.
Okay.
I like to say I have a subclinical type of ADHD. And being subclinical is because in order to be an actual diagnosis, it has to be significantly impact your life.
Mm.
It doesn't. I mean, I have a successful practice, I have a successful coaching practice, I have a successful marriage, I have wonderful relationships with my kids. My life is good. So I can't say that I have a disorder.
Mm.
Do I have some traits of ADHD? Of course I do. But then again, everybody does. I lost the question.
Yeah. So is there anything unusual you do? I like when you're working with people, I'm sure you see people without ADHD and with ADHD.
Yeah.
So is there anything unusual that you do with those people who have ADHD?
So the thing that I find that often happens with the people with ADHD is they have a lot of concerns about being able to follow through on stuff.
Mm.
Whereas, the non-ADHD people, they do, but not to the same extent. So what we really do is we kind of create systems to help them stay accountable to themselves to get things done that they need to get done. And it's really an experimentation process. It's with ADHD, it's not one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
That we co-create that plan together and we experiment, we try it out, see what works, see what doesn't work. And I think that through the coaching relationship and building that trusting, safe relationship, that I can I help my clients feel at ease, that they can have that psychological safety, that they can talk about stuff. And we just look at it in an objective way and say, okay, well, what didn't work? What did work? Let's try something different. And so it's that experimentation aspect in a safe environment that I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, I like that. The experimentation. I mean, I say that to my clients too. Like, what works for one person with ADHD doesn't work for another person
Right.
with ADHD. So you kind of have to experiment.
Right.
And then I was also noticing, and this is maybe the David Gawerk trained coach in me, but like you mentioned trust and safety, having awareness, getting into action, all these different things that are a huge part of the 5 pack essentials, the professional association for
Exactly.
ADHD coaches. So I
Exactly.
really liked all that. And are you still involved with PAC?
Um, I used to be on the board
Okay.
and I was one of the assessors. I know that I'm advisor to the
Okay.
PAC board. So yeah, I do that.
Okay. Yeah. Just curious because, you know, when I was going through PAC process and getting my coach credential, you were one of the assessors, and it was really interesting to hear kind of your view of coaching and how I was doing with my coaching. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I want to thank you for that. Uh,
Sure.
what else are you doing to help the ADHD community?
Well, I train ADD coaches. You know, that's something I do. I do presentations uh around ADHD um to people with ADHD and people with who don't have ADHD, because it's important to help people understand what the experience of someone with ADHD is so that people can accommodate that. Because if they don't, they're missing out on some really creative, cool people.
Mm, I love that. Creative, cool people. And that's kind of the mission of this kind of YouTube series I'm doing, is getting in touch with these creative, cool people, whether they have ADHD or not. But as long as they have some connection to ADHD, I'm willing to
Sure,
interview them.
sure.
So, because I have ADHD and I notice random things, I want
Hmm.
to talk about the picture in the corner of your screen there. Is that Spaghetti Bear?
That's Spaghetti Bear.
Yeah. So, you've got him in your office. What does Spaghetti Bear mean to your practice?
So you may notice I have a number of stuffed animals.
Mm-hmm.
Meet Ed. So hi there. So so clearly I work with kids,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a real big kid inside me. So I love working with toys. That's why I actually got into psychology in the first place. Where else could I play with toys and get paid for it? Um, so I was working with a 12-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't talk to me. You know, she had a lot of anxiety. I don't even remember if she has ADHD or not, but she had a lot of anxiety and she would not talk to me. She was afraid. I spent 4 sessions with her and she wouldn't talk. In the fourth session, she picked up this chimpanzee, and the chimpanzee started talking to me. She started using, so I started talking to him, and he would talk back and he'd say stuff and all that kind of thing. So I asked him his name. She said his name is Ed.
Mm.
So his name is Ed. Say hi to Ed.
Hi, Ed.
Hi there. How you doing, Alex? But so I work with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Spaghetti Bear is just part of the whole process. You
Okay.
know, the notion is that one of the things that we need to do as adults is really stay connected to our kid part,
Mm.
because our kid part is the one that takes risks, that is less filtered, and it's okay to be that way. And I think what happens, particularly with high achievers with ADHD, which is really my specialty area, is that these people are so anxious and afraid to let themselves be because they're afraid they're going to mess up, that they need to be able to get in touch with their inner child and be able to find ways to let themselves just be themselves and authentic. That's right. I also have a whole bunch of puppets over there too. So
Oh, nice. Yeah. I That was such a great story, and a good message too, like staying connected to that inner child. One of the things I talk about in my coaching practice is if it's not fun, it won't get done. And
exactly.
yeah, and so just getting in touch with that kid side just appeals to me, and
Yeah.
I might have to get a stuffed animal in my office.
Well, I have a gigantic bear over there too, so I got a lot of them.
Yeah, this has been great. We got a little bit of time left. Is there any question that I haven't asked you that I should ask you?
What does a coaching engagement look like?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Because you've written a book on ADHD coaching.
I have. Oh, you can't see it.
Go get it.
There it is.
Yeah, the guide to ADHD coaching.
Right. So Coaching engagement, the initial part of the coaching engagement is getting to know if it's a good fit between the coach and the client. Does the client feel that they feel safe with the coach, that they can feel that they can learn to be open if they can't feel open right away? They have to feel accepted by the coach. The coach has to communicate that. And I think the coach has to present an awareness of ADHD.
Mm.
There are a lot of coaches out there who coach people with ADHD and really don't know what they're doing because they don't understand ADHD. I've talked to a number of coaches. I was at the Harvard Institute of Coaching conference this past weekend, which was fabulous. And I talked to a number of coaches who had clients with ADHD who were asking me advice because they need to understand what that's all about. So I think there's that part. And then we get into the nitty-gritty. We kind of take a look at, what are your goals? Where do you want to see yourself? And again, people with ADHD often have a hard time seeing the future. So we talk about that, kind of talk about different areas of life. We might use a wheel of life or something to kind of help with that, to kind of figure that out. So we come up with a series of shorter term goals and longer term goals, and then we work towards them. So an engagement can take, 3 to 6 months. Sometimes it takes longer. Ideally, we meet weekly. If not, some people do it every other week, and we work towards the goals that they're looking for. I like to think that I'm partnering with people. I'm not helping people. I'm partnering with people.
I like that partnership. Again, another pack essential.
Yeah.
What do you think is, I guess, the recipe for a good coaching partnership?
Connection.
Mm.
Is there a connection between the coach and the client? Again, at this Harvard conference that I was just at, social connection increases your life, your longevity. Isolation reduces life expectancy. So where the work gets done is in that connection. It's the same thing in psychotherapy. It's the relationship that makes the difference. It's the same thing in coaching. It's the relationship that makes the difference. So if the client feels comfortable with the coach that they're talking to, the likelihood it's going to be useful to the client.
That's awesome. Where can people find that book?
You could go onto Amazon. It may not be in print anymore. So they can always email me and I'll send them a virtual copy. Not a digital copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got other books as well.
Yeah, the other one is called Lemonade, The Leader's Guide to Resilience at Work. So about 10, 12 years ago, working with some of my executive coaching colleagues, we were looking, because I'm very into positive psychology and resilience and what makes people resilient. And so we actually created a resilience assessment that looks at the various attributes that contribute to resilience, and then wrote a book that kind of mapped out each one of those attributes with descriptions and case studies of each person. And it's interesting in that social connection vein. There were 3 attributes that were the most highly related to resilience. One of those was being collaborative. And that's that social connection again. It's critical.
Yeah. Speaking of social connection, so wonderful to connect with you today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. So yeah, how can people reach you if they want to contact you, or where can they find your work?
So you can reach me by email at Graham, that's AGRAHAM, at ACP, that's all creepy people, the number 10, ACP10.com.
Nice.
Yeah, and my website is ACP10.com. I also have advisor.com, ADDVISOR.com, and ACPleadership.com.
Nice. Awesome. Well, you're doing great things. I hope you keep it up. And thanks
Thanks.
again for coming on the show.
Sure, I enjoyed being here. It's hard. I never met an audience I didn't like.
Good.